Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode number 53 of the Higher Ed Geek podcast with Kevin Forch. Really appreciate his time returning to chat with me from an episode a little while ago on the SAC podcast, which you can check out in the show notes if you're interested. But we go through a lot more of Kevin's story and just appreciate how honest and open he is and the work that he's doing with his students out there in Nebraska, doing good work. And really just always enjoy catching up with Kevin and wishing him all the best, and glad that I can continue to share his awesomeness with you all, and make sure to connect with him because he is a very good follow on Twitter. I enjoy connecting with him on there myself. So just check out all we mentioned in the show notes as usual. But without further ado, this is episode number 53 with Kevin Forch. Been a little while since we chatted like this, but I'm excited to kind of catch up and see what's going on in your world. But so I appreciate you making some time for this.
Well, thank you. I feel like I owe it to you since, what was it, like last March, that I completely just like walked by you in a airport and didn't say hi at all.
Oh yeah. I think we just generally like cross paths and missed connection. Because I think you're in like DC for a conference or something.
Yeah, it was for a conference, and I think it was our stopover was like in St. Louis or something, and I think passed you by someone who like looked halfway familiar, and I did not make a connection to that till I was like already on the plane.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that is how you like kind of like double take after the I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. I probably would not. And like if it were flipped, I would not have just been like, "Oh, hey, what's going on, man?" Like it's just like that is like social thing that could be like I don't know, not well suited for, I guess. But
yeah, I'm such extrovert, outgoing person that like I think everyone is like there to like connect and meet me if I go like someplace in town, like if I go to Target or something. But the airport and super early morning in St. Louis was not one of the places where I just expected to see people.
Oh man, yeah. Well, yeah, because it's like the difference, the setting, and if you're expecting it, and
sure.
Like because if it was like at a conference, you're like, I'm expecting that people might, come up to me or whatever. But so I don't know. I guess this like even because I think that was, if it was St. Louis, it had to have been like that's where I think we were going or coming from or something like for a wedding. Yeah. So that's funny. Cool. Well, thanks again for hanging out for the podcast here. I'll link, if people are curious, I'll link over to the other episode that we did before if people want a little kind of prologue or just further context whenever you listen to it. But I followed for a long time, so I always appreciate when we can talk like this because I know we kind of interact randomly online.
Mm-hmm.
But so I guess just because I know you've been doing, you kind of mentioned like some kind of work related kind of professional development or just sort of like, I don't know how you might categorize it, but I guess if you want to at least like kind of catch people up in terms of like kind of your professional journey of getting to where you are and kind of what you're exploring, I'm sure we'll kind of dig into a lot of it more throughout the episode, but just kind of the brief story of who you are and how you get to be where you are today.
Well, sure. My name is Kevin. Currently, I'm the director of student success for Southeast Community College. That's based out of Lincoln, Nebraska, and we have campuses in Milford and Beatrice, Nebraska, and all kinds of other sort of learning centers scattered all over our little service area in that corner of the state. Mm-hmm. I got started. I was born. I guess I got started because I was born there in Southwest Nebraska, so on the opposite side of the state, in a small town called Stratton, which has, at current count, like something like 380 people in it.
Wow.
Something like that, super small. And that's where I was born and raised. Went to high school at a consolidated school, meaning that was a couple of towns sort of consolidated in our high school. And my graduating class was 17. And I know that like initially from graduating to going to college, there was really only about 4 kids from my class who sort of went straight to college, or sort of to kind of a traditional sort of 4-year route, or even a 2-year route at that point. Some kids sort of went on eventually, but I remember living in sort of that small world and really being excited about making a jump to college. It didn't really register me that a lot of people were sort of either sort of stuck where they're at, or really didn't see themselves moving on to a 4-year school. And in conversations that I had with them kind of over the summer and things like that, that's something that really just stuck to me, that being in that small town, or sort of being, gosh, we were about 2.5 hours away from the closest 4-year institution. It's really sort of that barrier for a lot of kids, just not even visually seeing themselves as college material, was something that really stuck with me, kind of like from an early point of starting at college. And so that sort of led into potentially me being an education major while I was at school. I wanted to do secondary English ed, and I was really just gung-ho about it until I got to about like my 5th week of student teaching, and kind of realized I was miserable. I liked my kids, but a lot of the teaching aspects, kind of the repetitive nature, the discipline part of it, the grading and the grading essays and grading everything else was making me kind of miserable at that point. So unlike a lot of folks who come on your podcast, Dustin, and sort of say that they had their connections to student affairs professionals, like at their institution and things like that. I mean, I was involved at the University of Nebraska where I was at. I was a fraternity president. I did some other clubs and groups and things like that, but I don't know that I knew anyone who worked in student affairs at all. The only person from that side I really knew was a really sweet advisor that I had, who had been there forever, who kept calling me Kyle instead of Kevin. He was really sweet, so I just kind of went along with it. And so the student affairs part of that didn't really register, but I knew I wanted to stay in education, and I knew that the teaching part of that wasn't really going to work out for me that moment. So I graduated college in the fall of 2008, which is a rough time to graduate from college. That was sort of in the midst of all the financial crisis stuff. And I landed a job at sort of this super rural community college in Kansas, working for their Upward Bound program, which is a federally funded program that helps kids who are the first in their family go to college. And the goal of that is to get them sort of through to a bachelor's degree eventually. And so that work with Upward Bound just cultivated something so just like deep inside of me to my core, that touched on really that sort of sting I felt when I first got to college about a lot of kids in my class who I knew could be college material, who were better students than I was when I was in high school, and really helping those folks who have those barriers that are both seen and unforeseen, or just sort of people who have difficulty really seeing themselves in a different way than sort of their life exists at right now. We work with a lot of folks who are in really rough family situations, and really getting them to vision what their life could be like at a college, or to sort of set higher expectations for themselves than they had. That's something that really kickstarted something for me. This is sort of far as a life path and things like that. So I stayed in that for about a year. I started dating a person who would eventually be my wife, who was still in Nebraska kind of during that time. So I kind of bolted from the job so I could be closer to her, took a couple other random jobs, one at a call center for a cell phone company, which gave me an idea of what I didn't want to do with the rest of my life.
Sure.
And then working in the development office for a small liberal arts university, which was still cool, working with students and everything. But the first chance I got to get back to that Upward Bound world, I did. And it was at SEC. It was going through some more rural high schools. And again, sort of getting those students to step foot on a college campus, to see that they belong there, to see that they could interact with instructors, and whatever dreams that they had for themselves were realistic, were tangible, and things like that. And it was a super great experience. And kind of in that, I kind of got an itch to work with more of a college age population and sort of provide some of those similar services. SEC at the time had a position open that was called student retention specialist, and it was essentially you were an academic coach for students as they sort of started out and needed help. It wasn't quite tutoring, but it was more getting students set up with some of the baseline academic skills like note taking, test taking, how do you be a student, things like that. And so I jumped at the opportunity to take that position. That position was in Lincoln, so I got to sort of not have super long commute during work. So I got to sort of be within 10 minutes of my house to work. And again, I sort of sit down with that job as an idea of this is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be an academic coach for students. I'm going to help them with the note-taking part of everything. And the first person who sits down in my office on my first day of that job was referred by a developmental English instructor. And it was a guy who was in his 40s who just came into my office with just tears in his eyes. And like the first thing that he said to me was just that, I need a friend. And I know it was something I felt completely just unequipped for. But at the same time, like it just allowed you to be a human being to another person for a little bit. And we sort of got him situated, sort of as we sit down that first time. We talked through kind of what his plan was, and he wasn't so much looking for a degree. He was just looking to take a few classes so his employer, so he could get some more skills, so his employer could give him full-time work so he could have benefits and things like that. And he was just having a really tough time because he didn't see a lot of people like him who were in his classes and things like that. So we kept checking in, and eventually he was there for just a couple months at the end of that term and sort of found a full-time position and kind of moved on. But from that kind of first interaction, I got a full sense of this job is so much more than that academic side of it. And there are all these folks sort of walking around our main community college campus at SEC, which is in Lincoln, has about 7,000 to 9,000 students, and it's completely commuter campus. No residential area, no res halls there. Right. And it was just a whole idea. Sort of after meeting with a student like that, you sort of get an idea of what are all the other people on campus sort of walking around with, and what are they carrying with them that can help them or kind of hinder their success in school or help their success if they find connections for folks in classes, if they find connection to other student affairs staff on the college. And that was sort of another touch point to that job. And I was the one student retention specialist for sort of the whole student body of campus. There were some other ones on campus who were sort of for dedicated scholarships and student populations. So there were we have like a promise scholarship at the college for folks like right out of high school. So we had a couple success coaches or retention specialists for that. And then for a couple other scholarship programs. But I kind of had like 4,000 students sort of under my umbrella there to work with as one person. So I was just a lot of getting as many emails and calls and things and stuff like that out to students. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to really sit with it and program around it. And it was all just churn, and burn through all these student alerts and student referrals and things like that came to my office. But eventually, the student success coach or the director of student success position came up. They sort of restructured our office to be sort of more in line with what we do and calling ourselves success coaches. But in the process of going through that interview and thinking about what a director position looks like or someone who's in charge of that particular office, it really allowed me to sort of start to think about like, what do I want out of my work and the other folks who are around me, and what's going to have the most meaningful impact on students that we work with. And that's where I really got stuck on the basic needs services that we offer students. And a couple years after that, I've been in this position for about 2.5 years. And in our office, we have a food pantry. We have free printing for our students. We have on our Lincoln campus an office of about 11 success coaches who can sit down and work with students through the goal setting, the planning, and everything like that. But from a basic needs standpoint, we also have some of our offices and scholarships can provide some emergency funds. They can provide some of the some mini grants for sort of the extra costs that come up for students with their equipment costs for programs or things like that can be a real barrier. And so a lot of that basic need stuff has really been the spark point for really moving what we do and work forward. And so that's what the last couple of years have really been like.
Yeah, it's all important stuff. I mean, because yeah, it's like very valuable and helpful to just like, here's how to like organize your life and manage your time and like take good notes and like, you know, how to study and those sort of things. Because like, you know, oftentimes people maybe just haven't really built those good habits, or especially if it's people who, you know, are coming back to school after a while. But, you know, if you're working with somebody on time management, it would sort of naturally be like, okay, well, like, what commitments do you have? Like, what does your schedule look like so we can manage that time as well as we can? And it's like, yeah, you're getting into their, you know, their personal life and where they're coming from, and that's impacting their studies and those sort of things. So it's really cool to have somebody, you know, like the work that you did, and now that you're helping to sort of support other people to do, and that they're kind of really digging into that to like, because I think that's like the thing too, where like you're saying with like emergency funds and food pantries and that kind of stuff, it's like, that only makes the work harder, especially obviously like it's really hard for the student. They're struggling with that. But then it's like, well, I'm the coach and this student's like engaging with me, and there's stuff that like I just can't help them with. Like they need, you know, yeah, just like some extra funding to, you know, stay in their apartment or fix their car, or, you know, get medical care or something. And that allows them to persist and succeed because like, you know, they really, all other things being equal, would want to continue doing that. But there's other blockers in place. But like, you know, oftentimes there's only so much a student affairs professional can really do. But if, you know, the institution and offices and things they're making resources available, it's really always, you know, it's just great for me to see and hear about. And I guess, you know, because I think you answered a little bit, or a lot of the stuff that I wanted to kind of get to in terms of like, you know, your own journey and like those sort of things, like because of those things, if those are things like the emergency funds and food pantries and that kind of stuff, like, cause that's, like I said, that's kind of your world now. Like what's kind of like resonating for you in terms of your current work with those things? If there's anecdotes of like, what's really reinforced the value or the importance of those, or like, if you've seen like, I guess how you take it, if it's like, you know, one unique like personal anecdote, or you've seen like, you know, metrics improve, or like, you know, like different things, like how do, I don't know how you, maybe you're coming at it, you know, but yeah, like I guess what's kind of like keeping you engaged with this work. Cause I know, like I said, I mean, it could be tough at times with these struggles that people are having, but you know, what are things that sort of keep you motivated and keep you engaged to, you know, keep at this work?
Yeah. I mean, a couple of things are really great on a daily basis of keeping us, I say us, because I think a lot of the folks that work in the area of student success on our campus really sort of stay motivated by kind of similar experiences. And we have just the coolest like groups of students that get to come through and hang out. And for a long time, our office had existed in what was essentially a broom closet, where we had sort of like 6 staff who just sort of had pop-up temporary cubicle walls and furniture set up in there. There was no place for students to set, and no place for students to really like interact with the coach except for on these one-on-one meetings. Well, just before I was hired as the director of that area, we moved into what's now known as the Student Success Center. And we have all kinds of tables and computers and all this other stuff, enough space for a food pantry. And we just get to set and exist with this regular group of students that we have during the day. And like I said, on our particular campus in Lincoln, there's not residential halls, and some of our students have to get a ride with their parents on their way into on mom and dad's way into work, and so they're kind of just there all day without really any place else to go. So we get a lot of students who just sort of have us as their home base. We get to sit and interact with them. And even though it's a community college, like you still get to see so much growth from folks in 1 to 2 years. And we're currently set up on a quarter system. We'll move to semesters later on. But we sort of get these people in from term by term, and you just see this super growth from quarter 1 to quarter 2 to quarter 3 before someone takes off and has to do like their clinicals or other job site work before they graduate. And that's sort of like one-on-one growth that you see with the students that you see and interact with daily is just wonderful. From a larger standpoint, our institution in the past 2 or 3 years has really shifted from student services mindset that's transactional, that's just sort of get a student what they need and help them move on, to a student affairs informed approach, where we are super concerned about the student experience and from where students start to where we can hope that they finish, and what all touch points do they have with different areas in our college, and where do barriers exist, and what can we do to address those barriers. And it really digs into the data in ways that we haven't done in the past, and it really digs into a sense of collaboration and a sense of everyone who's on the campus is working towards the same student experience, a positive student experience, an inclusive student experience. And we sit on all kinds of teams and steering committees with folks from all over the college, from an instructional side, from an admissions side, from testing side, from an accommodations and disability services side, from tutoring and some of the other library services and things like that. And we just get to sort of set and talk about what we can do to work together to make a student experience better. And that's from an onboarding perspective, where we have sort of our welcome week stuff. From a new student orientation perspective, there's a lot of different areas of the college that sit on those teams. And it comes in part because at a community college, you don't have the full breadth of resources that maybe big institutions, four-year institutions do. But it really lends itself to this cultivating of a community that maybe hadn't existed 3 to 5 years ago. And it is such a wonderful thing to be a part of. Like, as someone who's, as I mentioned sort of at the start when we were talking, someone who is just super extroverted and super just wanting to sit down and connect with people and get their best ideas and all that, it's super wonderful to go into work every day and know that I get to interact with the full cross-section of college, of the college, to make student experiences better. And that discussion of ideas and that discussion of really moving towards positive goals is something that's just wonderful, and it just lights my fire just every darn day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's like part of the culture that like people show up to that, engage in it, and like, kind of taking the whole community there to help make sure that all aspects of student life are sort of supported and everything. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that like, because I know a lot of places are doing it, but I'm sure some places are not making the resources as readily available, or they're not. I don't know. They're not even thinking of it, I guess. But like, just in the ways that you had already spoken about emergency funds and food pantries and that kind of stuff. It's like it's manifesting for sure in that way, and even just for the sake of like you're saying, just like that physical space, even just existing is like valuable for people to just be like, that's a place for me to go. Like otherwise, like, I wouldn't have anywhere to go, and I may not come here because I don't have anywhere to go, like, because I just need to like hang out and study, print something or do whatever. It's like just us being here is valuable, and like, increases retention. Because again, it was like, I could see certain people being like, oh, I don't really interact with students necessarily on a daily basis, so I don't have those personal anecdotes. But I can see that like we're like keeping more students. Students are like getting better grades, or students are like, graduating and those sort of things. And it's like it all matters. So it's like if somebody's like, oh, I don't do it for the numbers. I do it because it's like I know that I'm talking to this person, and then they're like feeling better supported, and they're making connections, and they're doing better in their classes or whatever. Or they're like getting what they need. It's like I don't know. I feel like I like straddle both worlds now, kind of just like seeing like the direct impact of efforts on like the student experience, but also like kind of no, and I'm sure you do as well. I guess just always kind of keeping a finger on the pulse of like how things are tracking, kind of more on the numbers and stuff too. But I guess the other thing too, that we'll move on because it's more just me. Like it's a bit more of my world too, kind of like working in kind of the digital space with higher ed. Is there anything that you all are working on? Because I guess it would sort of serve even just with like commuters and maybe like adult learners and stuff, just like in terms of like kind of changing paradigms in terms of like using different digital platforms or like different flexible hours to catch people like after work or stuff like that. Like what are you all kind of thinking about in that regard, I guess? And I don't know if that's something that is like in the works or whatever, but I guess I'm curious how that's sort of manifesting there for you all.
Yeah, in the last year, from an hour standpoint, like you mentioned, we have just been keeping kind of from a headcount standpoint of from folks in our office, sort of busy times when they see students, things like that, and we've actually expanded our hours just to provide that kind of availability from both kind of a space standpoint where students can set, exist, have some place to print, but also from just interacting with a human being standpoint where students can come in and get questions answered about either quick things answered about their financial aid or a lot of what we do is really helping students to sort of set goals and sort of navigate kind of the bureaucracy that exists on a college campus. And so how to navigate maybe a conflict with an instructor or I got this letter from the college and I don't really know how to interpret it. Can you just talk me through these steps of what I need to do? Or students come in saying that they struggle with classes and they just need a referral either to tutoring or like a accommodation disability services or talk to someone about the transfer process to a four-year school. So that expanding hours has been something that has been kind of a data-driven decision that we've made. Another thing that's happened within the last year is we've just bought and got, thankfully, this new advising software that we have that's a college-wide shared note system that we have not had in the past. Our sort of previous paradigm was a faculty person would create an alert for a student of concern that they'd have, and it could be like someone wasn't attending class or someone failed an exam, and that alert would go to a success coach. A success coach would follow up with the student and sort of take their own notes, but those notes the faculty weren't looped in on, and really a lot of the other success coaches weren't necessarily looped in on or didn't get notifications about it, or in some cases couldn't see the notes altogether. Well, this new platform allows kind of just about everyone from student affairs and a whole lot of the faculty members to take notes on students that they interact with. It allows sort of for a more easy way to create alerts and have those the follow-up on those alerts be kind of more collaborative, not just someone from one office is in charge of it and that's the only person who can see any of these updates. It also allows for a case management aspect. So from a student affairs standpoint, one of the cross-section of teams that we have from folks in different areas of student affairs and academic affairs is what we call a care team, which is just folks who meet on a regular basis to talk through different cases with students of concern and find sort of proactive and positive ways to help those students out through whatever they're dealing with. So those two things are kind of the big ways that sort of speak to sort of the changing culture that the college has had, and something that provides better and more comprehensive support for students, and something that fosters, from a faculty and staff perspective, more collaboration and more transparency. And it's been something that's, we're still sort of in the process of rolling out and getting kinks out and sort of setting expectations for different areas. But it's been a lot of good work.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, even just like like simple like tools like that, where it might not be like the most complex thing in the world. It's just like, yeah, it's good for like consistency and like sharing information and notifications and like, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So I'm glad, glad you all are getting that kind of stuff. And yeah, because I mean, I think that's like, some places again are just like further along in certain aspects than others, but it's like, you all kind of trying to kind of go step by step with all of the important stuff that kind of every student affairs and every campus should be doing in terms of like solving as you can those actual problems that they're going through for, more often than not like financial stuff, but also just like using like good digital tools, whether it's just for like information tracking and sharing, or like for scheduling and video conferencing, or all these different things. It's like there's a lot of great stuff out there, and just obviously whatever makes the most sense for a particular campus or office or students and stuff. But so yeah, I mean, I guess just moving on from all the work related stuff, because I know you do have some geeky hobbies, which I appreciate, of course. So I guess I mean, if you want to dive into that, I guess I can also turn on my video, because I do have my little workspace here. If you can see some of the
nice
geeky art and everything.
Oh my gosh.
Not great for the people listening, but both of us have very geeky offices, geeky personalities. It kind of informs our like worldviews and just personalities and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it
Dustin can see behind me like 3 different Spider-Man posters, and what I can see out the other end here is like, what Dustin can't see is like 24 Funko convention exclusive things just like lining all over my wall. So there's a lot of geeky stuff happening. There's a geeky vibe, like just happening as we talk.
Because I think it's like, I recognize that maybe it's just people I gravitate towards, but like, like helper, like people in helping professions, it's like superheroes and like, saving the day. It's just like, yeah, you can get, like gravitate towards that. It's just like an enjoyable sort of thing, but also just like great stories, or just like entertainment, and like whatever, however people come to it. But yeah, I know that's something I think we've connected on a lot before, but I guess, what's kind of capturing your attention right now? Like, what are you geeking out about? Is it like new stuff, like nostalgia or whatever? What's grabbing your attention lately?
What's grabbing my attention lately is every like Captain Marvel trailer that comes out. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm a dad to a 3-year-old. And so the movies that I can find the time during the day to see are a little bit different than maybe the ones that I would love to see. Like, I haven't had a chance to go see Into the Spider-Verse yet, or things like that. But every time a new like Captain Marvel movie drops, like I have to go through like my work calendar, my personal calendar, just to make sure that things are blocked out just like exactly like I wanted them to be. Holy cow, does that look awesome?
Yes. I mean, because that's like any good excuse to get out to the theaters, because like Spider-Verse was the last movie that I went to go see, and as somebody who has Spider-Man art on his wall, it's like whenever you get to see it, it's going to be a treat. So it's like you can look forward to that. But yeah, like just more good movies coming out this year, like Captain Marvel, and obviously the next Avengers, and like another Spider-Man movie. Like, because I guess it's just like, I mean, the escapism, and I know, I don't know if this is something that you've recognized in yourself in terms of just how you consume like movies and television, that kind of stuff. Obviously, so much stuff we can watch on demand at home, and when I go to the theater, I think part of it that I've recognized that is so enjoyable is like, when I go to see the movie. Like, if I'm on my couch or I'm doing something, I might be like, oh, I'm messing around on my phone, or, I get a notification, or I stop the movie halfway through and I go do something. It's like, if I'm in the theater to watch a movie, like that's all that I'm doing. So I think that's why, like, at least once a month, I like doing it. And sometimes I do it on my own. Sometimes I do it with my wife, or like with friends or whatever. But I don't know if that's like, if you're big on like the way that you consume a movie, or just any of that kind of stuff, like being important.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent, maybe some other parents can relate, but just finding any time to consume a movie is a great time. So whether it's in a theater or at home, but I remember uh, the couple times that I did get to go out and like actually like see a movie. Like I went out to watch Black Panther, and I was actually that was the time I was in DC for a conference, and I had time later in the day, and so I went to the portrait gallery first, and I got to see like the Obama portraits, and then I got to walk across the street and go to like an afternoon showing of Black Panther, and just be able to like set in all kinds of just excellence from that movie and be able to reflect on it sort of as like credits rolled was just like such a powerful experience. And seeing it in the theater and not like fiddling through your phone or like jumping from one escapism to a next, like being able to just focus on the power of that movie and what I just saw in the portrait gallery, dang, that was powerful. And the same thing for there's a couple afternoons that I will just take if I have nothing going on and I just sort of like hit a point in the week where I'm just like, I'm done just with work things. Like my brain can't take a lot more. I'll just go through some personal hours and just take off for a movie. And that's when I saw Infinity War, and it was like it was just like this gut punch and just this huge, just like visceral feeling at the end of the movie. But like as you're walking out of the theater, like man, I just glad like these things just exist so you could actually just like feel that at a point. Like I don't know what happens in real life that doesn't have a whole lot of consequences that you can really feel those kind of visceral, either just like gutting, like losing either favorite character or having to reflect on just sort of the permanence of God, this is dark, like on the permanence of like death or like other the darkness of what Thanos was dealing with. But dang, it's cool that we have movies and other books and forms to be able to reflect on that and just think about that.
Yeah. Because yeah, it's like they package together so much like any of the Marvel movies, because they're not immune from criticisms for sure, but like
Right.
it's like it's a fun ride, it's epic scale, it's like emotional stuff and just like the satisfaction of like a story building over time and all this stuff. But it's like just like any, like especially for those, because they're like made to be seen in theaters too, so it's like always looking forward to the next one. Captain Marvel being looking like it's going to be like an amazing next one, like I can't wait for that. Well, and I guess, I mean, I guess that would be, and then we'll get any like sort of like, tips of the hat of anything specific that you might want to recommend that you might have consumed or recently or just kind of classically, but just to make sure to sort of kind of give it the proper space. I guess if it's like any of the more recent stuff, like you mentioned with Black Panther, or again, like more traditionally, like what are these like hobbies and stuff just for you personally, like anything else, I guess, that are like things that are salient in terms of like, because, for me, it's like all this stuff I've been into forever. And I just always think of these, different ideals that I aspire to, or, things about teamwork or whatever, like
For sure.
they sort of instilled good lessons, I get, but yeah, anything, I guess, in terms of how you see these like hobbies and interests positively contributing to your life and perhaps as a parent or, whatever kind of way you want to take it.
Absolutely. Like I've been like ride or die with Spider-Man from when I was like 9, and I think I don't know if you saw it. I put something out like sort of on that day that Stan Lee died, of just the importance of those characters when I was like in third, fourth, and fifth grade, because I was having a little bit of a problem being just sort of in a small town and somehow just not having a whole lot of friends and not being super comfortable like within my own body, and being able to watch like the X-Men animated TV series through the 90s, and seeing being able to pick up and buy Spider-Man comics and X-Men comics, and just sort of see those folks who sort of struggle with a little bit of that same exclusion, struggle with some of the same, I'm not sure who I am, this is the body that I'm currently inhabiting and I'm not really sure what to do with it, but to still sort of get up every day and step out the door and do good. those are a lot of things that have stuck with me about just the work that we do and what I want to do sort of day in and day out is that really no matter what, there's always this good to do, and there's this way to make those around you better, your community around you better, and if you have the ability to, then in some ways you have the responsibility to. And Spider-Man is all about responsibility, right? So that's sort of where we're at, and I think being able to share that a lot with a little 3-year-old kiddo who just adores Wonder Woman. She's super big at the moment in like all these Disney princesses and Wonder Woman on the side of that, and it makes me wonder a little bit about, well, what are some of the things that she's like taking away from these things, either if it's like Cinderella or anyone else, because while Disney movies are pretty great, there's some messages that aren't super great in there, especially for young women. But when I ask her about like what do you enjoy about Wonder Woman, or what do you enjoy about Moana, or what do you enjoy about Cinderella, she has all these just cool and just badass things that she likes about them. Like, I like Wonder Woman because she is strong and she fights. I love Moana because she is brave and she tries new things. I love Cinderella because she is kind. And just hearing that sort of thought process from a little tiny human, just, I don't know, that's pretty cool. And it sort of connects some of the things that I enjoyed about my really early heroes and things like that to sort of what she's feeling about them now as a 3-year-old. And that's a cool experience to have.
Well, I think too, it's like part of the sort of like the moniker of like geekdom of like almost like a personality or, whatever it is, like, I think it is almost like people who kind of like consume media in almost like that different, like critical way. Like you're really getting to like the morality or like the lessons or sort of like the arcs that characters go on of like, these different things where, because it's like, especially, these dated Disney movies, like you take them at face value. It's like, this formula, and it's like, okay, especially now in like 2019, really not the lessons that we'd want to be teaching people, but it's like, that's not to say that there's nothing to be taken from them as good examples of like, they're like kind characters that work together or do things. It's like, so yeah, it's really cool that, picking up on like the good things from, things that could certainly be, problematic in certain cases, but,
Right.
well, I guess too, yeah, I mean, anything specific in any of those regards of like, any particular, like, yeah, comics, like books, movies, podcast, anything that you'd want to recommend that's, again, either just sort of like an all-time favorite of yours or something recently that you got into, anything that we could include in the show notes.
Yeah, so recently, and these are going to be more tied to work and maybe like geeky things. They're kind of geeky part of work that I like. One thing that I'm super into is, in addition to kind of removing barriers of barriers that students run into at work, I'm really, really interested in reframing the way that we address how we talk about students who are experiencing those barriers. Like I read a really good piece, and I'll send you the link to it, so that can be shared wider. Is essentially asking the question, is lazy a real thing? And it goes into, it was a social psychologist who sort of wrote the piece who essentially said, if you look at a person and their situation and you think lazy, then what you should really be looking for are the unforeseen barriers. And that just lines up with my experience working with students who have been academically suspended from our college. And it really comes through in some of our data that says largely the reason that students leave or don't finish their degree has nothing to do with what we perceive to be intelligence. It has everything to do with barriers or asking for help or unforeseen circumstances or mental health issues or things like that all these students are experiencing. That really, that's where the big barriers are. And if we can sort of tap into when we see students who exhibit these what we would consider problem behaviors, how we address that with them can really transform not just like our student retention rate or anything, but it can really just transform how we address and wrap our arms around students and help them care and help them move on with their lives. So that's been something that I've been really trying to dig farther into and really have that be the torch I carry all over my college, about how we really talk about and address students of concern. And then the other part of things that I'm really working on this year, in addition to removing that word lazy or anything, it's really this is the year, and you can bleep this out if you need to. Like, this is the year that I'm going to own my shit in a lot of ways, and part of it is going to be that I need to reflect super hard. So when I see problematic behaviors or behaviors that I perceive to be problematic, I need to rethink how I address them. And I need to address that with curiosity and a little bit of sense of wonder and a little sense of digging at that instead of casting a judgment or reacting out of haste or anger or things like that. And some books or some ideas that have helped me with that has been like the Insight book by Tasha Eurich is flipping amazing. We went through sort of her like 50 question like insight self-analysis from in our one-on-one meetings with staff. So with the 11 people that I supervise, we go through different things every week talking about, or every other week talking about values, aspirations, things like that, in addition to other things that come up in our work. And it's really just sort of shed this whole new light on the people that I work with and had me reframe a lot of these notions that I had about these people that I've worked with, in some cases for 5 or 6 years. And me taking that time to really own that my perspective isn't always the absolute right perspective. Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of truth and shades out there that that can be different, has really transformed how I manage, how I interact with folks, and hope to carry that on throughout the rest of the year. Other things that have helped with that has been the HBR IdeaCast podcast. That takes a lot of Harvard faculty in their business school and talking about all these different concepts of some spots about business, but the ones I'm interested in about like team culture and organizational culture, and really bringing joy to work or eliminating barriers, or how do we interact with one another in ways that challenge perceived ideals, but sort of manage to get the best ideas and things like that. And then the Educate podcast has been super great as well. There's not a lot of like, I mean, there's Inside Higher Ed and there's like Chronicle of Higher Ed, and that's been basically my news source for education material in the last few years. But I came across Educate sometime in late last year, and it's from some branch of the public media universe, and they've been really great about taking really dedicated time to talk about a particular issue in higher education. And they really devote anywhere from like a half hour to like a full hour of just like really talking about it, unfolding it, and addressing it in interesting ways. So those are some of the things that I've been, outside of the regular geeky realm, kind of the work geeky realm, that's what I've been thinking about a lot.
Yeah, that's all good stuff. And yeah, I mean, that tends to be like, the books that I read are, like kind of like nonfiction stuff, and just sort of like, helps me in like my entire world, or just like, professional world maybe. But I mean, that's good recommendations. And I think good lessons, like good little nuggets for people to chew on, and then they can follow up the books and things to look into, to explore more of just like, because like the one person perceiving someone else to be lazy, it's like the idea of like, if you're, working so many hours and you're taking care of like children or family, or it's like time is limited, and you're just like, well, why don't you just like, do whatever. It's like, I literally don't have time. I got to like commute. I got to work. I got to do this. It's like, I just don't have time. And that's like the enemy of, like, I remember reading that in a very like enlightening article where it's just like, that's a good point. Cause that's certainly been, my life sometimes, where it's just like, I can't do things, so I don't have the time, because like a thing is closed and I can't go because I have, there's other stuff to do. And then, if like people are saying problematic stuff, it's like, that's, the culture, like the internet culture moment right now is just like the outrage culture. We just want to like have the righteous indignation to be like, oh, you're wrong, right? But that certainly sometimes comes from like, I think that I'm right on all things, and you're not fitting in my paradigm. So I'm going to like, sort of, like get on you about it or whatever. So it's like, just like those kind of things, like reshaping stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, my outrage pulpit and things like that has certainly gotten a lot smaller doing this, because it just seems like there's a whole lot to unpack, and I cannot claim to be the person who is right about all, whether it's in my day to day or whatever you read on Twitter or the internet. Like,
Right.
I just gotta own my stuff, man.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
focus on. Yeah.
Well, that makes me think of just completely like non-related, like from like the context that it came from, but it's sort of like it was good advice. So maybe this will like hit some people that are listening in a particularly good way. So it was in the context like a friend who's like had some like dating troubles and stuff was just like, hey Dustin, like you seem like a pretty good guy. Like, what would be your advice for like if I was looking for somebody like you or something? And I was like, you know what? It's that idea. It's like owning your stuff and like taking care of yourself, whether that's, a lot of people are like, gym rats and meatheads or whatever. It's like, that's clear where it's like, oh, you quote unquote, like take care of yourself. But it's like, it's a lot more than that. It's like, like owning your stuff and like going to therapy if you feel like that's something that would be helpful. But like, it could just be like, oh, I've recognized this like behavior or habit, a thing I want to change. So I'm going to like read on it or, I don't know, like, just start or stop doing something that doesn't feel like something I would, want to continue doing or whatever kind of shape it takes. But like, I'm like, if you're dating, like try to find somebody who like, they capture that somehow. It's like, you're taking care of yourself because it's also like, bringing all your baggage to a relationship, or you're not going to have these like, bad habits or something. It's just like, try to find somebody who's like, who takes care of themselves on like sort of the next level from just like purely physical, which is obviously important because that sort of embodies like going to the doctor and like not eating crap all the time. But it's like that was like that made me think of that, of just like it's important to do for anyone at any point, just like
Like, for sure, like especially like what I would say from like a staff standpoint too is like, if we aren't taking care of our whole self in that capacity, not just from a wellness perspective, but really just owning our role and kind of the ineffective behaviors that we have or encounter, like how can we expect to take care of like our students? Like, we are going to be dragging along so much of our own baggage. Like we're not going to have any hands for theirs. And I mean, we just mentioned students are walking a pretty tight rope for all the stuff that they have to juggle. So we got to bring our best selves to them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess, because yes, that I'll take that's like an optimistic thing. And, like we have to sort of, embody the values that we aspire to, help students in the best way possible. So I always like to end the episodes on an optimistic note. So, you can take it, kind of one or any or all. What is something or what are some things that you are looking forward to in your job, life, and or the world?
I am looking forward to, in our job, I'm looking forward to all these changes that are happening. We are switching to semesters in August of this year, and that gives us an entire summer term to really transform the onboarding process that we have for students, from coaching them while they're in high school to guiding them through the orientation process, and then really seeking all of our care and love into them in the first weeks that they're at college. And I think that's such a cool opportunity that we get to completely rewrite that from a semester's perspective. So that's awesome. Things that I'm looking forward to in the world, I'm going to hit up again that Captain Marvel looks amazing, and I'm going to be all kinds of looking forward to that. And from like a self that's outside of work, like I am just I haven't touched on this at all. Like one of the other hobbies and things that I love to just get out and geek out about is just running. And I enjoy the winter months, but I cannot wait for ice to be off of the sidewalk so I can actually like get out and put one foot in front of the other and just run for actually having daylight outside to do it. So that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's something that's like, hard enough for anybody to like get out to the gym when it's cold. But if it's just like, well, I prefer to run outside, and it's really like, not impossible, but like far harder right now. Yeah, we just had our first, as of the recording of this podcast, our first good snow of the winter here in Baltimore. So, yeah, so we'll see how this I think this is the first time that like living in the city that it's like had substantial snow because we moved here in like February of last year. I don't think it snowed at any point then. So now it's just like, okay, we'll get to see how this city reacts to having like a decent amount of snow on the ground. But yeah, yeah. Yes, I mean, that's all good stuff. And I appreciate you sharing all that you did and giving us some good resources to connect with in the show notes. But yeah, I mean, appreciate your time as always. And always good talking to you. And yeah, just please, I encourage everybody Kevin's a very good follow on social media and connect with him if you want to keep the conversation going and stuff. But yeah, just appreciate your time again. And yeah, hopefully I'll talk to you again soon.
Well, I hope so, Dustin. Thanks for having me on.
This podcast is part of the Connect EDU podcast network, bringing together diverse voices in the higher ed community. Check us out on Twitter at ConnectEDUPod or at connectedu.network. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek podcast.